Hello, everyone. Today's video is about Zimbardo, right? Philip Zimbardo, the local weirdo. Zimbardo's research is what you need to know. This bullet point, there's not actually really that much to it, to be honest. All you really need to know is the very, very, very basic outline of the theory, but also everything about Zimbardo. So Zimbardo's study comes up quite a lot. Okay, uh, and they've never asked at the time of recording this video. They've never asked about social roles, as in the theory. All they've ever asked about is the study. So the theory is pretty basic. So we have looked at conformity. This theory is about conformity to social roles. So it's the idea that we all have social roles in our life, right? So I am a teacher, I'm a boyfriend, I am um, a tennis player, um, a son, a brother, right? We all have several roles. You are a student, and by the way, I'm a middle-ish child as well. Even a daughter is one role, but youngest daughter is also another role. So you've got a ton of roles. So the question I would want to ask you is, are you conforming to the common perception of what that role is? So, for example, if you're the eldest child, one of your roles is to be a bossy know-it-all. And most of you are. I'm not being funny, right? You think you're King Ding-a-ling because you're the eldest, right? And you act as a parent to your younger siblings a lot of the time. Um, are you conforming to that role, right? What happens if you're the only child? Are you conforming to that role? As a teacher, one of my role is to be professional, to turn up on time, to make resources, to do marking, to be organized, to teach you. And I would say mostly I do that. One of my roles is to be professional. That I don't think I do. That's sun. Why am I turning this way for? Um, that I don't think I do. Okay. Um, I don't think I am always the most professional. I swear quite a lot, for example. I tend to say what's on my mind, which is maybe not the most professional. So you could argue I don't fully conform to that role. I've just realised as well. Um, it's called COVID. It's what we think COVID looks like. Um, Lovely. So let's get into Zimbardo then, right? You need to know the aim, you need to know the procedure, you need to know the results. So there were a couple of aims. Zimbardo's research aimed to investigate. Always remember that an aim tends to start with the word to. So Zimbardo's research aimed to investigate whether students would conform to a role, and they were given a role of either a prisoner guard or a prisoner. Now, they were given this role and it was random. It was completely random. They were told that they were picked for the role. So if I were to give someone the role of a prisoner, I would say, look, we've looked at you, we've asked questions, and we think you're going to be a prisoner. But actually, it was completely random. It was completely randomly assigned. Zimbardo also wanted to explore whether recent cases in the 70s of police brutality was a dispositional factor, so something to do with the person, in this case, a sadistic personality, or whether it was a situational factor, such as down to the prison environment. So we wanted to know almost whether it was nature or nurture, really. Is police brutality caused by nature or nurture? So let's move on. He built a fake prison, basically, right, in the basement of Stanford University psychology building, right. Stanford is in California, I think. I'm pretty sure it is near. I think it's near LA or San Francisco, one of them. And basically, he did an ad, and there were 75 applicants who applied in this newspaper ad. They were given interviews, they had personality tests, and they were basically assessed for a whole host of things. And it got whittled down to the 24 most physically and mentally stable. So clearly these people are not sadistic, right? Clearly these people are not sadistic. So Zimbardo is testing whether or not it is sadism that causes police brutality. So he's got 24 of the most normal, well-adjusted people he could find. The participants did not know each other prior to the study, and they were paid $15 a day to take part. Fine. That's pretty standard so far. So as I said, they were randomly assigned to be either a prisoner or a guard. There were 2 reserves, but you don't really need to know about this. And eventually it did actually drop down to 21 participants who basically cracked under the pressure. And here's in my opinion, one of the most unethical parts. The people who were designated to be a prisoner, before they actually got told they were a prisoner, they were told that they didn't make the final cut in the experiment, and they were sent home. The next day, Zimbardo gets the actual police to go to their house and arrest them on the front lawn of their house in front of all their neighbours, right? And didn't tell them. Right, and didn't tell them he was going to do this. It's really unethical. They were actually taken to a local police station, and they were basically they were booked. The booked is what it's called when it's when you process a prisoner. Basically, you fingerprint them, you take their photo, you shave their head, you delouse them, and they when they arrived at the prisoners, they were basically stripped naked, deloused, had all their all their prisoner uniforms given to them, and basically a key word here that you need to note down is they were dehumanized, right? They were de-individuated. They essentially had their identity taken away from them. That's why you shave people's heads in prison, by the way, if they have hair to shave, is to basically take away their identity from them. Although they don't do it in female prisons, I don't think they do it in male prisons anymore, actually. So all the guards, on the other hand, were involved in setting up the experiment. So they were building the prison in the days before, so on and so forth. And all the guards were dressed in this khaki uniform. They were given sunglasses. They were given kind of almost truncheon-esque kind of things. And like I said, they were given kind of special sunglasses so they could avoid eye contact. Now, one little thing you do need to know here is a film called Cool Hand Luke had come out in quite recently. I think it might have been that summer, and it was kind of shown that people were kind of basing their look as a prisoner guard on Cool Hand Luke. So that was the role that they perceived. I think Cool Hand Luke, I don't think he's a prison guard, I think he's a police officer, but people were associating that social role with Cool Hand Luke, and therefore they were then conforming with that role. I don't know how else to put it. So Zimbardo, whilst all this is happening, there's a few other bits. There's a lot to this process. There's a lot to this procedure. But Zimbardo, instead of acting as an impartial observer, he got involved in the study. He made himself, because he's so weird, he made himself the prison superintendent, right? Oh, prison warden. He basically had all final decisions go through him. He set the rules. That's not good. That is not good. You're clearly being biased in your own experiment here. So that's a huge criticism, by the way. Within a very short time, and that's the very quick run through of the procedure. You also need to know the results, and mostly what you'll find here is the results are very qualitative. They're very sorry, I've got to shut my blind. I've just broken it. There we go. Oops. There we go, I'm back. They're very qualitative findings. There's not many numbers involved here. So within a very short space of time, both guards and prisoners were settling into their new roles. Um, uh, and within hours of the beginning, some guards began to harass the prisoners. So they were awakened from sleep by blasting loud whistles, and they were made to do a lot of exercise. So there are some reports of the prisoners being made to do press ups, and the guards would stand on their back. Remember, these are normal people. These are normal people, and all of a sudden they've become almost sadist and psychotic. So the prisoners also adopted prison-like behaviour. They talked about prison issues quite a lot. They told tales on each other to get favours from the guards, which again happens in prison. And they started taking the rules very, very quickly. However, the prisoners actually tried to revolt, and it got put down very, very quickly and very brutally by the guards. And I think it was within 36 hours. Within 36 hours, what was I going to say? Within 36 hours, one of them had broken, psychologically completely broken. Push-ups were a common form of physical punishment imposed by the guards. One of the guards stepped on the prisoners' backs while they did press-ups, or made other prisoners sit on the backs of fellow prisoners doing their press-ups. So it's a weird prison, admittedly. But during the second day, the prisoners removed their stocking caps, ripped off their numbers, and basically revolted, barricading themselves. The guards called in reinforcement, and they basically broke in. And they put the ringleaders of the prison rebellion in solitary confinement for a long period of time. And that's when it really started to get quite bad. So it deteriorates, it gets worse. And at this point, there is a good evaluation that I remember from this, actually. But at this point, the prisoners were not unified. They were weak. And they were basically not in control whatsoever. Guards become more. It was getting worse. It was getting worse. And here's the key criticism: Zimbardo, despite the fact he could see it getting more violent, he did nothing because he was too involved in the study. He couldn't see it for what it was because he was so involved. And it eventually actually took a visiting psychologist who became his wife later on. It took her to come in and be like, what the hell are you doing? So the study was supposed to run for 2 weeks, but they had to shut it down after 6 days because basically the prisoners, their mental health had gone so bad. It was Christina Maslach, I think that's how you say it. She came in and basically said to Zimbardo, what the hell do you think you're doing? This is absolutely not right. You need to end this right now. And she convinced him. So she was the only one who ever questioned his morality, apparently, out of 50 people who actually did come to it. So why did this happen? Right. Zimbardo's talked a lot about this. And this study is one of the most unethical pieces of research. Maybe not on Milgram's level, which is what we look at a bit later on, but maybe not at Milgram's level, but it is very, very unethical. So Zimbardo stated that the prison environment, the situational factor, not the dispositional factor, the prison factor was the main reason. What's happening here is people are being given a role. They're being given a situation, and they are all abiding by that situation. They are all conforming to that role. So he also said that de-individuation explains the guard's behavior, right? So that thing I just said, that's one conclusion, right? They are abiding by the social roles. They are conforming to the social roles. Zimbardo also argued for another element to this, de-individuation. If I take your identity away from you, are you going to act the same? If I take your identity away from you and you know you can get away with any crime, would you still act the way you do now? Zimbardo argues no, because if you de-individuate somebody, they're going to act very differently. Now, I like to think I'm a relatively calm person a lot of the time. However, if you take my identity away from me and put me in a car, And why is that taking people's identity? Why is that taking my identity away from me? Because people don't know who I am, and if they come after me, I can just drive off, right? And just right. In a car, apparently, I get really angry. I wondered if Candy would hear that. In a car, I get quite angry and quite sarcastic, but I wouldn't normally do that in real life because I'm de-individuated. So I get road sarcasm. I don't think I get road rage, but I do get road sarcasm. Anyway, the other thing that's in play here, the third conclusion, is that learned helplessness could be seen here. In order to know that, you have to know what learned helplessness is. Learned helplessness is where an individual has learned that they cannot do anything to help themselves and give up trying to control the situation they find themselves in. It's when people get punished and punished and punished and punished and punished, which is what happened. And then people think, you know what? If I do something, I'm punished. If I don't do something, I'm punished. So I'm just going to not do anything. And even when you show them, no, you're not going to get punished, they still can't do it. So learned helplessness actually exists in students quite a lot. If they feel, if I don't put effort in, I'm going to fail. If I do put effort in, I'm going to fail. So what's the point? And even when you say, look, I'll sit down with you. I will, go through things with you. They go, no, it's not going to work. They have learned to be helpless. And this also kind of happens here with prisoner 981. No, that wasn't even nearly close. I don't know why that was. 819, who initially refused to leave the experiment as he feared others would think he was a bad prisoner despite his mental collapse. He had learned to be helpless. A lot of strengths and weaknesses here. So I do have a model answer on the next slide. Quite a short one, actually, but good positives, though. Zimbardo's research is still talked about now. It's made us more aware of the power of the power of the situation, and that should not be frowned upon. That's a good positive. There is considerable evidence that participants did react to the situation as though it was real. So, for example, 90% of the people, 90% of the prisoners' private conversations, which were monitored, were on the prison conditions, whereas only 10% were talking about outside life. And that's kind of similar to Winchester Prison, for example, where most of the time people are only talking about what is happening around them. So it does kind of suggest that the participants did take it seriously. However, I do want to point out for the negatives, and it's definitely worth reading about this, by the way. It's definitely worth reading about this. Recently, about a year ago, one of the participants opened up and said that basically it was all fake. Zimbardo made us do it. He was giving us clues about how to act and things like that. And he basically said we all knew it was a like experiment. We all knew what it was after, and we just kind of faked the behavior. So that is a bit of a negative. Now Zimbardo said, "No, that's bullshit, mate," or words to that effect, and he's kind of disputed it. But I'm not being funny, but if you can reference that prisoner, and all you have to do is type in, I don't know, into Google Zimbardo study doubts, and then go to news, and then look at the nearest one, you're probably going to find it. It wasn't conducted in a real prison. Right? Say what you want, but the prisoners did know they were not in a real prison, right? It's not as if they genuinely thought it was the police they were dealing with. They knew it was part of an experiment. They knew they were, maybe not in the university, but they knew it was a mock prison. So therefore it is lacking ecological validity. The demand characteristics comes into that, obviously. Zimbardo obviously skewed his impartiality, and the big thing here is just how unethical it is. It's so bad in terms of ethics. It's so bad. Now, what you probably should also know as well, Milgram really buggered people up. Milgram was before Zimbardo, by the way. Milgram really did screw over a couple of people, more so than Zimbardo, I think. But it was actually after Zimbardo, It was actually after Zimbardo that psychology introduced ethics. So that's how bad it is. Apparently, Milgram phoned up Zimbardo afterwards and thanked him for doing such an unethical piece of research, because it would mean that Milgram would stop getting it in the neck about being so unethical. I think Zimbardo was Milgram's student. Zimbardo was Milgram's student. Milgram died ages ago. Zimbardo was still he's about 90 years old. He's kicking on now. So a massive negative about Zimbardo is that it is hugely unethical, right? And here is a model point, right? A main criticism of Zimbardo is the fact that he played the prison superintendent and therefore could have been biased. That's my point. What's my evidence? It's likely that the role involved Zimbardo in the experiment too much, whereby his decision-making as the prison chief would directly impact the outcome of the study. Why is this bad? Who cares? Who cares about this, right? As a result of this, it is possible that the outcome of the study is invalid due to the unnecessary interventions done by Zimbardo, and he may have lost his impartiality due to his over-involved muddling. Therefore, the study can be criticised due to the loss of impartiality and the absence of a more objective researcher. That is the level of detail you need to go for appeal, right? And that's it. I think that's a shorter video. I don't really know, actually, to be fair. I did bang on a bit there. But you can see most of this video I've been talking about Zimbardo's research. You do need to know his research back to front. It's a very common question. Next video will be about Milgram, actually, and the explanations of obedience. But as always, I hope that was useful.